Her Byakugan was a curse. Himawari felt her body tremble, but it wasn't from emotion. It was from sheer frustration. She tried again, forcing chakra into her blue eyes, seeking the Byakugan, but only saw a faint flash, a weak pulse that quickly faded. The power of the Hyuga clan, her mother's inheritance, felt like a curse to her, a power she could never truly grasp. This was crazy, dude. She saw Boruto activate his Jougan out of nowhere, and remembered the stories of Neji, the guy who could turn his Byakugan into a deadly weapon, a vision that pierced through everything. Hers? It felt like a joke, a broken toy that only amplified her pain of feeling useless. She needed something more. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and the silent forest lit up with an energy that made the ground tremble slightly, a different chakra, pulsating with the surrounding nature. Himawari knew that sensation, and her heart clenched, mixing admiration and a silent envy. And there he was, her father, the Seventh Hokage, in a sun-dappled clearing amidst the trees. Naruto Uzumaki was there, but he didn't look like himself. His clothes swayed, and a golden aura radiated from him, with orange eyes and cross-shaped pupils. Sage Mode. He clenched his fists, and the ground beneath his feet cracked with the pressure of concentrated chakra. Naruto threw a punch into the air, and the impact made the closest trees sway violently, leaves flying in an explosion of energy. It was raw power, a force that crushed everything. Himawari felt a pang in her chest, a mix of awe and a crazy thirst for it. That was what she needed to feel strong, to protect those she loved without fear. Her Byakugan seemed like an old flashlight next to that insane beacon of power. Naruto deactivated Sage Mode, the golden glow dissipating as he took a deep breath. He sensed his daughter's presence and turned his head, a tired smile appearing as he saw her there, her eyes fixed on him with a serious expression. She approached, her bare feet barely making a sound on the forest floor. "Dad," she said, her voice firm, but with a hint of urgency. "I want to learn Sage Mode." The phrase echoed in the silence, heavy and full of a determination that caught Naruto by surprise. Naruto's smile vanished, replaced by an expression of shock and deep concern. He knew how dangerous it was, the risk of turning into a stone frog, of losing control. This wasn't ordinary training, and he looked at his daughter with apprehension. "My Byakugan doesn't work right," she continued, her blue eyes full of cutting sincerity. "I feel like I can't protect anyone with it. I need a power I can control, a real power, Dad." Naruto stared at his daughter, seeing the same unyielding stubbornness he had, the same Kushina fire in her eyes. He took a deep breath, silence filling the space as he pondered the impossible. Accepting her request could be the biggest risk he'd ever faced. He knew this would change everything. The danger of turning into a stone frog was real, and Himawari would experience it on her own skin. Naruto looked into his daughter's eyes, and a heavy sigh escaped him, because her stubbornness was identical to his. So he accepted her request, but with a brutal condition. If she failed, the risk of transformation was permanent, and he couldn't do anything. The next day, they were on Mount Myoboku, and the air there was different, dense with natural energy, and the giant toads watched Himawari with curious eyes as she felt a mix of hope and a corroding fear deep inside. Dude, Shima, and Fukasaku, the elder toads, explained the process, and their words were direct and ice cold. Absorbing too much natural energy would turn the body to stone, and the mind would be lost, becoming a lifeless statue, an eternal failure. Himawari sat in a meditation posture and tried to sense the world around her, but her mind was a chaos of expectations and frustration, and the natural energy felt slippery, impossible to grasp and concentrate within her own body. She closed her eyes and pushed her body, but the energy seemed to mock her, and the Byakugan, that flawed power she possessed, pulsed weakly, but didn't help her sense the world at all, feeling more like a burden than a help. Suddenly a chill ran down her spine, because the natural energy seemed to swallow her whole, and Himawari's skin began to harden, the tips of her toes turning a gray and cold stone. Panic rose in Himawari's throat, and she tried to scream, but her voice seemed locked because her body was weighing down, becoming a monument to failure, and the horror of turning into a statue overwhelmed her in an instant. Naruto acted in a flash and pulled his daughter away from the pool of natural energy, and her body returned to normal. But the pain of failure and the vision of imminent death carved a deep scar in her mind. "Your Byakugan, Hyuga, has always sought the internal," Fukasaku said in a hoarse voice, "but the sage seeks the external, nature, and this contradiction is what's holding you back, girl." Himawari stared at the ground, cold sweat trickling down her forehead, and she knew she needed to change the way she thought about power, and not just the Byakugan, but her entire being, to try something no one expected. A bizarre rumble tore through the air, and the ground at Mount Myoboku trembled with a violence that made the toads scream in panic, because a dark and hostile energy invaded the sacred place. Naruto sensed the sinister chakra, and his expression hardened instantly, and he knew that thing was no joke, threatening not only their lives, but the peace and secrets of Sage Mode, something that couldn't fall into the wrong hands. No way. A shadowy being, made of darkness with eyes that looked like holes in the void, emerged from the trees. and launched a burst of energy that Naruto only managed to dodge by the skin of his teeth, feeling the deadly heat of that attack. The guy was fast. Himawari saw her father fight and felt that familiar pain again. Her heart clenching as her Byakugan, even activated, only showed a blurry image of the enemy, a blur her power couldn't decipher, and she felt utterly useless. Her despair was a silent scream, and she thought of Fukasaku's advice, the Byakugan looking inward and the sage looking outward, and a crazy idea began to bubble in her mind, a forbidden fusion that scared her. The shadowy being lunged at Naruto with insane speed and hit him squarely, throwing the Hokage against a rock with brutal force, and the impact made Naruto's body buckle and he spat blood, his chakra failing instantly. And Himawari's Byakugan exploded in her eyes, but it wasn't the weak pulse from before, but an intense glow that seemed to pull the surrounding natural energy into her, without her even wanting to. An abnormal connection, an excruciating pain coursed through her body, as if nature's energy and her Byakugan were fighting inside her, tearing at her cells. But the image of her fallen father ignited a flame of fury and determination that overcame the agony. She ignored the pain and forced the two energies, the Byakugan and the sage, to meet at the same point, and a bluish aura began to envelop her body, pulsating with nature's chakra, but also with the killer clarity of her own ocular power. It was something new. Himawari raised her hand and unleashed a blast of blue and green chakra that seemed to tear through space itself, hitting the shadowy being squarely with a violent explosion, forcing it to retreat with a distorted scream of pain and rage. The energy dissipated, and the shadowy being vanished into the shadows, but Himawari's Byakugan still glowed with a greenish hue, and her body trembled, exhausted, as she looked at her own hands, feeling a raw and unknown power, but one that could come with a horrific cost. The pain was a brutal warning, but Himawari already knew she needed to break all the rules. Her body burned, every cell screamed after that insane strike, and the Byakugan seemed fused with a natural electricity she didn't quite understand, pulsating in a strange way. That power that made the enemy vanish came with a bizarre price, because her Byakugan now felt like an open wound, pulsating with an energy that was tearing her apart from the inside, and the cost could be her very life. Naruto, still recovering from the blow, looked at his daughter with a concern that cut through the air. She felt that if she continued, she could shatter into 1,000 pieces, but her mind was already set on discovering what that truly was, a power she needed to control. "Daughter, what have you done?" Naruto asked, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper, and the pain in his body was secondary compared to the fear he felt for her, because something was truly wrong with her body. Himawari looked at her father, her blue eyes sparking with a terrifying determination, even as the pain tore through her. I don't know, Dad," she replied, "but I won't stop. I can't be weak again." She knew this was her chance. Fukasaku and Shima, the elder toads, approached, their serious expressions and eyes fixed on the girl. "The Byakugan and the sage, a fusion never before seen," Fukasaku said, his voice deeper than usual. "But the natural energy will tear you apart if you try again, girl." Himawari's head spun, but the image of her fallen father and the feeling of helplessness were stronger than any warning, and she needed to understand how to control this raw power before it was too late. She felt that if she didn't try, she would lose her only chance to be strong. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and forced the fusion again, ignoring the excruciating pain that immediately began to consume every fiber of her body, because it was like trying to combine fire and water in her very soul. The Byakugan activated and a greenish light appeared around her. A scream escaped her, but it wasn't pure agony. It was a mix of pain and a power that seemed to be born, because the natural energy and the Byakugan were fighting, but also molding together, forming a different chakra, with a blue and green glow no one had ever seen before. Divine Mode was being born. The aura pulsed strongly around her, and Himawari felt an absurd clarity, as if she could see the flow of life, the heart of the world, but the cost was extreme exhaustion, and a sharp pang in her Byakugan, which now seemed overloaded, like a broken eye that had seen too much. She opened her eyes, and the world seemed different, sharper, and more dangerous at the same time, because Divine Mode held a dark secret that could consume her entirely. The pain was excruciating, but her vision was terrifying. Himawari's body burned, as if her own chakra was fighting against nature's energy, tearing at her every cell, and the pang in her Byakugan was a screaming warning that she was at her limit. But deep inside, something different began to bubble. Naruto saw his daughter's face contorted in agony, and felt a chill down his spine, because her stubbornness was his own curse, but also the key to a power he could barely imagine, and the panic of losing her was huge. Fukasaku and Shima watched, their eyes fixed on her, and the silence was heavy, because Himawari's internal struggle wasn't just against the pain, but against the very nature of her Byakugan, which she was forcing to look outwards in an unthinkable way. Suddenly, Himawari felt a fissure, a small breach where the Byakugan, which always sought the internal and the flow of chakra, managed to connect with the natural energy pulsating outside. as if the two powers had recognized each other on a cellular level. She pushed harder, ignoring the searing pain that threatened to rip out her eyes, and the fusion began to stabilize. A firm and strong pulse that reverberated through her body, silencing the internal chaos for a brief and powerful instant. A blue-green aura exploded around her, more intense than before, and Himawari's eyes glowed with a new light, a vibrant mix of the Byakugan and Sage Mode that shocked the Elder Toads and Naruto himself. It was as if the world gained a new dimension for her, because Himawari didn't just see the flow of chakra, but the breath of life in every leaf, the heartbeat of the earth, an intimate and terrifying connection with everything. Naruto widened his eyes, heart racing, because that was Sage Mode, but elevated to a level he had never seen before, with the Byakugan giving a clarity and range that made his own power seem like child's play. Divine Mode, Fukasaku murmured, his voice filled with reverent awe. She didn't just break the rules, she rewrote them, dude. Himawari felt a raw power flow through her, but along with it came a chilling vision, the shadowy being from before, hiding in the depths of time and space, watching, waiting, and with it a sensation of an ancient evil, a danger that had no end. The power in her hands was insane, but the price could be even greater, because Himawari knew that this new vision would bring terrible secrets, revelations about enemies no one could even dream of facing. The pain was excruciating, but her vision was terrifying. Himawari felt the raw power of Divine Mode pulsate, an insane fusion of the Byakugan with natural energy that now sought every heartbeat of the world, but also an instability that threatened to tear her body apart from the inside. A high cost, too much to bear. Suddenly, the shadowy being reappeared, and it wasn't an illusion, dude, but a figure of dense shadows, with empty eyes that fixed on Himawari, recognizing in her a power it seemed to want to devour, a source of strength it coveted. The girl didn't hesitate, and thrust her hands forward, and a blast of blue-green chakra, a jet of pure Divine Mode energy, exploded towards the enemy, tearing through the air and surrounding trees with an implacable force. The shadowy being tried to absorb the blow, its shadows condensing to resist, but the Divine Mode energy was too powerful, and every cell of that creature seemed to scream as it was consumed by the overwhelming attack. Himawari felt a sharp pain in her Byakugan and chest, her body vibrating as if it would explode. But the image of her injured father and the need to protect Mount Myoboku propelled her, and she forced the power even further, ignoring her own limit. With a scream of fury and concentration, she channeled the remaining energy and unleashed a second, even more powerful attack that completely engulfed the shadowy being, and it disintegrated into a cloud of dark smoke that soon vanished completely. But the victory brought no relief, but a new danger, because the instability of Divine Mode, still active, began to distort the space around Himawari, and a bizarre rift, a portal, opened in the air, pulsating with an unknown energy. On the other side of the portal, a vision appeared, a desolate world, with red skies and ancient structures in ruins, and in the center, a tall figure, with glowing eyes and a chakra so ancient and malignant that it made Himawari's blood run cold. Naruto and the Elder Toads watched in shock, not understanding what that terrible vision was, but Himawari knew, deep in her soul, that Divine Mode had not only made her stronger, but also opened the door to a dimensional conflict, a destiny that transcended everything they knew. The portal began to close slowly, and the figure from the other side watched Himawari with a penetrating gaze, a dark promise that the future held a challenge that would make the previous enemy seem like child's play. So dude, did you dig Himawari's journey? If you want to see how this crazy story continues, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us what you thought of this bizarre Divine Mode.